Esperemos. Un segundo. Okay. Right now we are live. Now we're live.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're doing quite well tonight. Tonight, oh my God, I'm so used to working nights that I don't know where the morning starts and the afternoon begins. So I hope you're doing well this afternoon. We're gonna wait for more attendees to get online. So right now we have, I hope you're
Give me
doing
one
well,
sec.
Ken. Right now we have 63 people online, which is actually quite good. So let's watch our intro one last time and then we will continue. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. That's a lot of Spanish in my chat window, so I hopefully it's gonna get more bilingual as we move on. Okay, so just 1 minute and we will get started. Okay, welcome everyone. It's 2 in the afternoon, and I'm really, really glad to be here with you in this beautiful and sunny day. Thank you very much for getting online, for being so punctual, as you might already know, I'm really punctual myself. And I'm actually seeing, I'm actually watching a lot of you are getting online. We have 111 people live right now, which is super great. Welcome to our opening lecture of the semester. This is what I really like about these moments is that you can get in touch with other voices, other ways of thinking, and you get to know more people and other academics that can actually tell you about new things that sometimes we might not address in our classrooms. So today we will discuss about global skills. Our guest speaker today is Claudia Arteaga. She'll introduce herself in a second. But, well, first of all, I hope you're doing a great semester so far. We are finishing our fourth week. The time goes by really quickly. And well, it's been quite a ride, but thankfully we're here, we're live, and I really expect for you to participate a lot. Our speaker has told me that you might need a QR reader at some point during the presentation, so make sure that you have a QR app on your smartphone available. I expect a lot of participation. Uh, Claudia, Catherine, and me. Catherine is also there somewhere. We're going to be paying attention to all your questions and all your interactions in the chat. And welcome. Before we start, I would like to make very important announcements. First, remember, guys, if you have registered for the Saber Pro exam for this semester, we're going to start with our pre-course or preparatory course for this exam. It's called Saber S. It starts tomorrow, and I've heard that we don't have a lot of people from the program registered. So the link for registration is on the screen right now. Make sure you go there, register, and be ready. This is a great tool for all of you. Information is also in your email, and I'll send you another message later on. And of course, our fifth International Congress of Education called Cinco Miradas de la Educación Actual. Remember that this is completely free for you. You don't need to pay for the registration for this course and for this Congress. And it's going to be really interesting. It's going to take place between the 21st and the 25th of September. Information in your institutional email with your teachers or through your monitors. You can text me via WhatsApp or however you want to do it. So it's a really important event for all of you, and it's for free. I mean, it cannot get any better. So register, be ready for our Congress. Once again, I cannot thank you enough. I'm really happy to see so many people online. So even so many of my students online, that's going to be great. I will think about you in class. And now we are back. So Claudia, you have the floor. You are the owner of the presentation. Welcome to Universidad La Gran Colombia, and we're in your hands.
Okay. Well, David, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Good afternoon to all. It's really nice to be here. Like David mentioned, my name is Claudia Arteaga. I work for Oxford University Press. I am a sociologist, but I've been teaching already for 25 years. And I'm a TEFL certificate as well. So yeah, I understand the needs of teachers. I understand the needs of students as well. So the idea is to share information with you, and I hope that all of you can learn a little bit from what I'm going to give you this afternoon. Once again, thank you. Thank you for being here. I see that out there, a lot of students online. That's nice. So let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. And I think we're ready. So today we're going to talk a little bit about global skills and creating empowered citizen students. So like I told you before, let me just move this a little bit to one side. Just minimize it here and perfect, much better. Okay, so today we're going to talk about global skills, creating empowered 21st century citizens. And why are global skills so important nowadays? What is the need of global skills in the classroom of us as teachers integrating global skills and teaching global skills? So we're going to start the session with 3 questions. What are global skills? Why should we assess global skills? And how can we assess global skills? And at the end, we're going to wrap up with some conclusions. So the first one, what are global skills? We're just going to go through this quickly. So in this case, we have that it is increasingly recognized that education needs to cover more than traditional subjects if learners are to be equipped with flourish now in the future. Students all ages need to learn the skills that are critical for life learning and success. This is very important. Global skills can and should be accessible to every single learner in every education setting. It doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the education settings, but they should be there. They prepare learners for lifelong success, not only academically, not only in their personal life, and not only in their professional lives. It prepares them totally. So not only that, it also moreover with this, it is typical that emphasizes on communication as well, in collaboration and into intercultural competences. Now, something else is that in the English language classroom, in our scenarios, is mainly suited to develop the global skills. We support it in assessment and practices that are provide opportunities for learners to demonstrate their progress and receive ongoing constructive feedback, which is also very important. So we're going to analyze this quote. So first we have here that education needs to cover more than traditional subjects, and this is very important for us. The notion of global skills exists because it's widely believed that traditional classroom subjects on their own do not provide learners with all the skills to succeed in the future. So this is why it's so important for us to do this as part of our English learning environments. Another aspect to highlight about this quote is that skills that are critical for life learning and success as well. We need to focus on providing learners with skills that, excuse me, do you listen to the noise in the back? I'm sorry. With the skills that learners need to succeed in order to succeed in their life. These are the ideas, and some of these ideas have been expressed in different international recognized organizations, like for example, UNESCO recognized that, and the same things that's the OECD. They also recognize the importance of having global skills in our practices. Here we're going to see some frameworks that support these beliefs and support these thoughts. Here we have the frameworks for global skills. For example, the first one we have UNESCO, like I mentioned before, and UNESCO is one of the frameworks that honestly concern and is always continuous developing in the learning of global context at all stages of education. There are a number of frameworks that support this idea, and they're publicly available, but there's only 4 that actually they really reinforce this part. So here we have UNESCO. We also have assessment and teaching for the 21st century skills. Basically this one, like UNESCO, it focuses on the 4 pillars of the framework, and it compromises the skills to work towards to the PISA, to 2018 PISAs, which assess the learners, okay, which we have here as well. And at the same time, also encompasses with the 21st century skills learning. In this case, the framework for the 21st century learning emphasizes that global skills to be successfully developed, several key macro issues need to be taken into account. And we say this is necessary to include an appropriate assessment, different approaches into our curriculum, instructional methods, learning environments, as well as the provision of professional development to our teachers. This is also very important in this process. Now, saying this, we need to talk about the global skills, and here we have divided in 5 different clusters that we're going to see how the global skills work in these clusters. So here, for example, we have the first one. And here the first one talks about communication and collaboration. It's clear that communication is clearly relevant and efficient in our language process in the learning environment. And this includes awareness to the context, to the purpose of the audience, as well as the different models of a communication that we also have in the classes. This could be like written, it could be oral, okay? So something else that we need to be aware of is that collaboration is already a key feature of communicative ELT environments. And this is something that we normally always do in our classes. And this is the ability that we have to collaborate and value the many fields of work as well. Now, when we talk about communication and collaboration in the ELT environments, we need to know that first in ELT communication, refers to the ability to use the language in nonverbal forms of communications in ways appropriate of the context. Go to the next one before. The communication aims is also as a medium of communication of face-to-face or digital. It also involves successfully managing our social interaction by using linguistic strategies such as paraphrasing, use of intonation, non-linguistic strategies as well, gestures, eye contact. Okay, so these are most of the important aspects that we're going to find in communication, in collaboration. And again, when we talk about communication, it's closely connected as well to collaboration. And this is the way that draws into social skills, such as the perspective of switching, also empathy as well. Collaboration also refers to the ability to work effectively eh, towards achieving some goals or the same goals. It requires individuals to demonstrate openness and learning from others as well to sharing their own resources as well to others. So this is one of the clusters. The second cluster that we're going to find, it refers to creativity and critical thinking. Not saying that it's the least important, but I think that all of them are equally important. But in this case, when we talk about creativity and critical thinking, also appears the more existing framework and are closely related to the concepts. The ability to think critically requires a creative mindset. Something else also that creativity and critical learning also are considered important in life skills and are highly praised in modern workforces as well. When we talk about creativity and critical thinking, it also, for example, in the case of creativity, involves thinking flexibly to generate new ideas, solutions, solving problems. With creativity, a person can produce various independent of a response to issues, to topics, to challenges. In the case of critical thinking, it's a natural partner to the creativity, and it's required to have a mindset as well, creative mindset to think outside the box or look at things differently. Critical thinking refers basically to the ability to analyze information, to draw conclusions, problem solving skills, also have like a proper and balanced judgment at the same time. It also includes the ability to evaluate different sources, accuracy information that we can find in online or information that we find offline as well. So this is basically very important for our day by day. In the next one, we're going to find, in number 3, we're going to find intercultural competencies or citizenship. When we talk about this, basically intercultural competence is about the need to interact appropriately with the people from diverse cultures, backgrounds, which is particularly relevant in language learning. And we are aware of that. Citizenship is closely related to intercultural values, and it also relates to specific components in local and global communities as well. When we talk about the intercultural competence, this one covers the social aspect. It covers the social and the interpersonal skills that we need or students need to manage cross-culture encounters in a respectful way, in an appropriate way, in a sensitive way as well. And something that, for example, in the ELT classroom, this is something that we really do in our classes. ELT classroom can provide many opportunities to do this. It could be, for example, when we assign any type of project, online projects with learners from other countries, for example, that could be one example. Other could be local community projects with diverse cultural groups, and in some school contexts, for example, group works, mixed culture classroom activities as well. So for example, in learning a language can open a new ways of talking about the way that we view the world, the way that students should see the world as well. And teachers definitely can encourage learners to learn to appreciate and to understand similarities and differences among others, which is very important nowadays. And that one way or the other, there's a tendency to lack on this. Another the clusters here to mention is going to be digital literacy, which is very important nowadays. In this one, for example, it's very relevant in technology in a driven society, and it has also to do with the ability to create, to share meaning, digital resources, to share information, and obviously it's increasingly importantly and rapidly. Its geographic boundaries also, it's there in everywhere. So this is all, it also helps a lot. And this requires an intercultural competence and citizenship skill as well. When we talk about digital literacy, encompasses the individual technological and social skills that ones that they need in order to navigate and to grow in different scenarios in a changing world, which is very important. Remember that this is changing, all the digital communication is changing rapidly. Students are learning in a different way. There's different channels also to assess the information, and that is very important. So these skills are very important. They should be included. They should be included as the ability of effectively interpret, manage, share, and create meaning through all of these channels that we find. And one of the last clusters that we find here, which is, I think it's highly important that we work a lot with our students, it's the emotional and self-regulation, regulation and well-being. In this cluster, one of the aspects that we always need to bear in mind is that it's always clear in the framework is that sometimes it overlooks. Okay, so there's a lot of institutions and teachers that really do not think is that relevant. Okay, and however, this is increasingly in being, and now something that is it's happening nowadays is that emotional and self-regulation has been included in different curriculums around different schools worldwide. So this is one of the aspects that we need to include into our classes. Now, something else that we need to highlight about emotional self-regulation is the ability to recognize, identify, and understand one's personal emotions and their functions. It includes also an awareness of regulation strategies for managing emotions appropriately, and it's also a basis for well-being. Well-being, which is also crucially important, well-being involves being able to find supportive and social connections and sense of purpose. It also entails awareness of an engagement in its positive physically and mental health practices. In this cluster of the skills, it deals with such things as learning autonomy, having positive attitudes, motivation, self-regulatory strategies as well. It also promotes a lot physical and emotional well-being. So these are the clusters, one of the clusters that we find that are crucially important when we talk about global skills. Now, here we're going to see those emotions and how does this emotional self-regulation and well-being skill, does it really affect in a positive way in our students? First of all, we could see that it recognizes, identifies, and understands their own emotion. It also, when they have this emotional regulation skill, they can select healthier strategies for managing their own emotions. Then they can demonstrate awareness of strategies to promote well-being, and they could also can take actions which are opportunities to physical and mentally and healthy lifestyles. When we say this, in educational institutions around the world, learners' well-being is now being included as a teaching objective across the curriculum. So that's why it's becoming more important every single day. In ELT, for example, in ELT, more humanistic and learner-centered approaches already focuses on related aspects, such as the way of promoting learners' autonomy, enhancing learners' sense of self-efficacy, and attending to a positive learner's attitude as well. So these are some of the aspects that we consider that are crucially important where we're talking about global skills. Now we're going to do something. You're going to scan. Please scan this QR code. Catherine and David, could you let me know as soon as they have it, please?
Okay, now they are watching the code. Let's wait a minute.
Yes, they have it there. Okay, just in case that you don't have the QR code, because I'm reading I'm just going to copy the link in the chat box. And I don't know if you can share the link with them. Can we share the link with them, with the participants?
Yes,
Yep.
yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So just let me share the link over here. That way they could just go directly. Okay, so everybody's here already. Okay, perfect. So here we have, let's see this. Here we have produce various interpretations of and responses to issues, to topic and challenges. What does this skill refer to? To what cluster? Communication and collaboration, creativity and critical thinking, or digital literacy? So what do we say? Okay, so we have 4 students in communication and collaboration. We have more than that, creativity and critical thinking. So yes, produces various interpretations and responses to issues, topics, and challenges. So yes, definitely this skills refers to, okay, let's see this. More 16, creativity and critical thinking, digital literacy, 1, 5 in communication and collaboration, okay. Okay, perfect, good. Okay, so I think that we have a very good idea here. And yeah, definitely, it refers to creativity and critical thinking. That's correct. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, perfect. So let's go to the next one. Now, we're gonna go to the next question. And the question here is, why should we assess global skills? Why do you think it's important to assess global skills? So let's have some of the students writing a couple of answers. Why do you think it's important to assess global skills? And you, David or Catherine, can you just read some answers, please? Why do you consider it important to assess global skills? I'll start myself from here.
There are no answers yet.
There are no answers yet. Yes, I could see that.
Not yet.
Answers in the chat. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the present. Let's see exactly what are the needs of assessing global skills. We're going, for example, for this one, what are the importance of assessing global skills? We're going to have in 2 different questions. First, what is the purpose of
There is one
assessment?
answer.
There is one answer. What is the answer?
To get intercultural students.
To get into?
Intercultural students.
To get intercultural students. Okay, good. So let's see. What is the purpose of assessment, which is very important? What is the purpose of assessment? And what are the consequences of assessment as well? Okay, so we're going to start with these 2 questions. What the purpose of assessment is. So for example, when we talk about assessment, there are a lot of things that come into our mind and the different possibilities that we could assess our students, okay? And definitely assessment needs to have a clear purpose, and definitely it should be consistent with objectives to obviously lined up with the curriculum. That is like the first purpose that we need to have. Now here we're talking about the assessment of learning and assessment for learning. I'm pretty sure that you know what the differences is. So instead of going to the QR code, I would like for you to go straight to the chat box and let's share the answers. What is assessment of learning? Do we have any answers? Yes, on assessment for learning? Let me check here.
No.
The
No,
purpose
no.
of assessment. Okay, so we have here Maria Alejandra answered that the purpose of assessment is to take into account the process of our students having during the learning. Okay, what is assessment of learning? Okay, that's the question. What is assessment of learning?
There is an answer. Measure the process.
Make sure that
To measure
The process.
to measure the process. Exactly. Here's a clear difference between what assessment of learning is and assessment for learning is. Okay, so for example, here we have that definitely assessment of learning is to give a grade. That's exactly what it implies, okay? And it's a simple term we can think of assessment of learning as what we do when we give a progress achievement to, or a test, okay? So the primary purpose is to see how well students have done. And obviously, like someone mentioned, is to give a grade. Basically, that's the idea, that is the purpose. This basically is the traditional form of assessment, and necessarily it does have not necessarily it gives us much information, okay, of what is going to happen in the future. Basically, it gives us information on what already happened, and that's what it does, okay? On the contrary, when we talk about assessment for learning and assessment for learning, basically we have like three different ideas for learners. First of all, we need to know that this is something for learners and for teachers to know. What do we need to know? We need to know exactly where they are in their learning, where they need to go in their learning, and what is the best way to get there. So when we talk about where they are in their learning, it is the purpose to know what needs to be focused on. This enables the teacher as well to use assessment to plan for the future classes, to know exactly what are we going to plan, how we're going to assess our students in order to achieve their goals. In the second one, where they need to go, this one is basically the purpose is to identify the future goals, what future goals should be. And the last one, how best to get there, the purpose is to identify what is the best approach for the class in order to achieve these goals, or for the students in order to achieve those goals. So these are like the differences between assessment for learning and of learning. Now that we said it, definitely when we talk about assessment of learning, it's a summative, it's just a grade, and assessment for learning, then we have that it's definitely, it's formative and it's qualitative, okay? Now, the consequences, what are the consequences of assessment? When we talk about the consequences, obviously every single assessment definitely is going to have an impact. It's going to have a positive impact or a negative impact. It just depends on the student, and depends as well as us from the teacher, what kind of impact we're going to leave in this type of assessment. Now let's look at this quote, and it says, how and what we assess should be directly encourage the skills we want to learn. This is very important because the way we assess, or the way we assessment, will have an effect on what we want students to learn. And this is something that we need to be aware of. In this case, we're going to talk about the consequences that assessment can have. And there's some different consequences that it could have, some different impacts that it could also have. Any assessment will have an impact on the learner, the teaching, and beyond the classroom necessarily. For example, students might get stressed by the assessment, which normally always occurs. The teacher might start teaching and preparing the students for a particular assessment for an upcoming test. So that is normally happens a lot. And obviously, thirdly, that happens a lot as well, is that parents are always there with the pressure of the grade, and they want to see like the students or their children doing better in their papers or their assessment or their activities or whatever it is. Okay, so those could be like some of the consequences, but I would like to refer to the one that we have here. Assessment of global skills involves using a range of evidence to determine learners' progress, which results in judgments about the quality of learners' performance. Research suggests that many students restrict their learning to what is to be assessed, and this restriction may apply to attitudes and expectations on the other stakeholders, from policymakers to parents. One benefit of assessing global skills is that stakeholders will value them and will be more likely to recognize that these skills necessarily are intrinsic in teaching and learning. So this is very important. Let's analyze this. So here we have this one, and it says research suggests that many students restrict their learning to what is to be assessed, and that is true. It is typical, it is logical. Many students identify their main objectives is just to pass a course or to pass a quiz or an exam. And obviously, therefore, they only focus on what they need to learn in order to reach that objective, and that's it. Okay, their only interest in that case is just to do well in an assessment. Now, if we use global skills, that things could be different. Students are going to start learning and valuing more what they do in class, and they become more responsible. And also they're going to identify their needs a lot better. So this is one of the aspects that we need to be aware of. On the other hand, when we talk about the stakeholders, this is another important aspect. This restriction may apply to the attitudes and expectations of our stakeholders or from policymakers or even parents. This is another aspect that is very important for us to analyze. The impact of assessment goes beyond the classroom. If we do not assess global skills, we cannot expect policymakers and parents to value them. So that's why this is important. So these could be some of the consequences. So here we have, what is the purpose of assessment and what is the consequences of assessment? The purpose of assessment basically of global skills should be assessment for learning. That is one of the main things. When thinking about global skills, we should be using assessment formative qualitatively to gather information in order to know exactly where learners are going, what is the correct path to follow, how can we help them reach this path. So we need to follow 3 questions: where learners are in their learning, second, where learners need to go, and thirdly, how is the best way to take them to this path or to achieve their goals. Okay, if we do not assess global skills, then learners would not focus on them. And this is when the stakeholders would not value them. Now, here the question is, we have some questions here. Okay, yes, we have some questions there. They're interacting, that's nice. So the next one is, how can we assess global skills? We're gonna go back to this. We're gonna go again, let's memorize this. Let's take a look at this. So here we have intercultural competence citizenship. We have communication and collaboration. Don't forget the names. We have creativity and critical thinking. We have emotional and self-regulation and well-being. And we have digital literacies. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Quickly, all of you participating. So this one, we have the first one. Which one do you think it is? Take actions which contribute to physically, mentally, and healthy lifestyles and socially healthy lifestyles. Which one does it correspond to? I also have my cell phone here, so I'm going to try to read what you have. So this one refers to what? Okay, I agree, because something that we can evidence in the classroom is that students give more importance to the score they can get. That is true. Okay, so here I have one of the skills. So you tell me which one does it belong to. This one, it says, take actions which contribute to a physically, mentally, and socially healthy lifestyle. Which one do you think that this cluster belongs to? To what global skill? Okay, here we have some answers. Emotion, self-regulation, exactly. Juliet, emotional and self-regulation. Maria Alejandra, integrated learning. Okay, emotional, yes, it's emotional, emotional. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Definitely, it's emotional and self-regulation. Let's go to the next one. The next one is Deloitte data literacy to derive meaningful information from digital data sources. Deploy data literacy to derive meaningful information from digital data sources. So this one corresponds to which one? The sixth one, okay. This one is which one? Who remembers? The sixth one, Natalia says the sixth one. The sixth one is digital literacy. Digital literacy, exactly. Okay, very good. Yes, that is correct. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Present coherent arguments about the source, reliability, and accuracy of information. Which one corresponds to this one? Present coherent arguments about the source, reliability, and accuracy of information. Which one is this one? Okay. Who's going to give an answer? Present coherent arguments about the source. Digital literacy, no. Present coherent arguments about the source, reliability, and accuracy of information. So we have someone that says creativity and critical thinking. Let's see what it is. Definitely, yes, it's creativity and critical thinking. Let's move on to the next one. Understand and appreciate their own multicultural identities. What do we have? Which one do you think it is? Understand and appreciate their own multicultural identities. Which one is this one? It has a keyword. Understand and appreciate their own multicultural identities. What do we have? No, it's not. What do we have? What do we have? Intercultural competence. Juan Jose just mentioned intercultural competence. Maria Alejandra also mentioned. Let's see what it is. And definitely, yes, that's the one. Let's move on to the next one. Show empathy with others and understands a range of alternative perspectives. Which one is this one? Show empathy with others and understand a range of alternatives and perspectives. What do we have? Number 3. What was number 3? What was number 3? What do we have? Intercultural learning? No. Communication, Paula Andrea, communication and collaboration. So let's see if definitely it is. It's communication and collaboration. Very good. Let's move to the next one. That was the last one. Okay, perfect. Very good. Very good. Okay, yeah, definitely yes. Now, we were talking about the way that we need to assess what are the best ways or what should be the way that we can assess global skills. Okay, so we're going to move to this one. What is the best way to assess global skills? It's not the only way, obviously, but it's the ones that research recommend. So we're going to start with this: assessment, classification, and success criteria. I highly believe this is very important. It's just to keep assessment decision in a manageable as possible. Okay, for this reason, they use like this 3-level criteria. It's like a rating system, and they consider that this rating system is more than enough. They consider that this rating system is sufficient. And the rating system, what it says that it's necessarily we need to start like working towards, achieved, and exceed. That is basically the the rating system, okay? So these rating systems are used in terms, it's like the best way to fit in a relation to the competence of a statement, okay? So for example, in this example of how the 3 levels could be interpreted, you could see that perfectly well, we could see that there's something that is collaborative through learning from the others. Easily we could see that, which is the part of communication and collaboration of the cluster global skills. We could also see that is achieved. In the case of achieve, we could see that students are able to take things from others and learn from them as well. And in the case of the exceed, just in the last moment, in the moment of exceed, the students actively engage in supporting others in the process of learning. Okay, so this is exactly when we could say that students already have achieved their goal, they have learned a lot, it's going to be meaningful for them, but obviously working towards achieve and exceed. Okay, like following that rating system, which is going to be very significant from us and for students because they start like learning from others. Now, obviously, to do all this is necessary to implement or to have some tools because otherwise it's going to be a little bit more complicated. And these are the tools that we normally have in our classes. This is exactly what we normally do with our students. And here the suggestion is to keep on using the ones that we already have in our classes, but with a specific goal. So for example, if we talk with we have like 4 different tools here. We have observation and dialogue. We have learner evidence. We have effective feedback, and we have learners portfolios. I know that all of us are aware of these. We are familiarized with them, and I think that we have used them in some cases. So it's like, it's there for us to use. In the first one, we're going to see that we have observation and dialogue, and this one appears in 2 different ways. It appears either as an informal observation or as a prompt, a deeper thinking our students. So what I'm going to show you is just some examples, and that way we could see exactly how we could assess this into our classes. This is just an activity, and this one is, for example, the case of an informal observation. So this one, for example, while the students are doing this type of activity, we should observe what the students are doing in terms of the global skills. In this activity, we can see that students ask the questions. Necessarily, they need to identify which is the suggested study tips that they have. So here we have study the life skills and strategies. How do you usually remember things that you want to learn? The second one says, read the study tips for remembering vocabulary, then copy and complete the chart in your notebook. So here you have like the 3 columns, the study tip. Do you use it? What do you think of it? So these are like basically one of the examples that we could use in our classes. In this case of the activity, we can see that critical thinking when students give their opinions of the study tips. We could also see collaboration in the comparing with their partners. And we could also see the emotional well-being when they consider and how they feel about the activity or about the suggestions or about the questions, okay? So when in this case, what we know is that assessment for learning is going to be present, assessment for learning is present. So necessarily they start like developing the process, and at the end, they're going to find that it has a meaningful impact for them. So they start like reflecting on what they do, which is very important. In the next one, when we say promote deeper thinking, we can promote deeper thinking by asking students questions which relate to the global skills and not just about the language, which is very important. And that's what we normally do in ELT classes. For example, here we have some of the questions that we could use for this purpose. Which, in your opinion, is the best tip and why? And for example, by doing this, we're getting students to reflect on their learning, first of all. The second question is, which one do you think you will try and why? If we have students to do this, basically students are going to evaluate how future actions might help them for their future learn. And the next one is, how have you organized yourself to do this? This one is very good. It's very important because this is a good general question when students are doing any type of project, either if it's group work or an activity in which students have some autonomy in developing a piece of work. And this gives the students to use some metacognitive thinking, which is very important. And the last question that we need to address in this process is, do you think this is the best ways of doing it? And with this type of question, we're going to encourage the students to think about how they are working and to encourage them as well to look for ways of improvement when asking these type of questions. It is important to consider the readiness of the students in this part of the process. And this way it's going to facilitate the process to move on and forward. Okay, so in that case, from these lower type of questions up to higher order questions. But basically, these are one of the questions that it's important to apply into our classes in order to promote deeper thinking. Now, the next one that we have is learner evidence. In learner evidence, we have three aspects. We have output, success criteria, and we have a self-assessment, okay? So in this case, we can use, for example, some of this, let me move, sorry, forgot to move here. So here we have, for example, the output. We have different kind of questions. Listen again, which words and places can you remember from Sally's memory journey? Invent a memory journey using all the words in the shopping list. Work in pairs, compare your memory journey from exercise 7. Who has the most memorable journey? And number 9, it takes them to a reflect moment. We can use any output from the students to assess global skills. So this is just some of the examples, but normally in our ELT classes, we are always using outputs to evaluate or to understand their learning. So this is one way to also assess global skills. Now, when we talk about success criteria, this one, for example, it's one very useful way of helping students to move forward in their learning, and it's to make them aware of what success looks like, which is very important for them to identify what success looks like. One possible way of doing this is to show the students or to model how to meet the criteria in different ways, or compare previous examples rated working towards the achieve and the exceed and discuss the differences. Some of the aspects that we need to think about, or the benefits, for example, when doing this, is that necessarily when we have this part, students are going to become more aware of the global skills in general. Secondly, students become more aware of what is expected from them. And thirdly, students were also going to be able to use these within their self-assessment, which is also crucially important. And finally, students are going to be able to follow and to model, then they can start practicing and participating a lot better. Once they reach the self-assessment, and self-assessment is an effective tool in assessment for learning. I think that is one of the best way to promote or to work assessment for learning is through self-assessment. So here we could have, for example, in case number 8, work in pairs, compare your memory journeys from exercise number 7, who has the most memorable journey. So in this type of exercise, and again, number 9, where they have to reflect, this is perfectly well for assessment for learning. Now, once we reach the feedback, and feedback, it's important of their learning process. Sometimes there's like a tendency to forget about feedback. And I think, honestly, that feedback is one of the most important parts of a learning process. Students need to have that feedback. Students need to know exactly whether they did well or not. They need to see exactly what are the areas in which they need to improve, okay? So it's important to feedback our students. It's important to know, why are we doing this? We're going to see some learner questions, and we're also need for students to learn how to negotiate criteria. So these are very important aspects when you have a feedback, or when students need to have like a feedback. learner questions, negotiate criteria. It's crucially important. So we're going to see this here. Why are we doing this? I don't know why sometimes it's so complicated sometimes for us as teachers, like to tell them. I know that in every single class, we as teachers, we always have like the objectives of the class. These are the objectives of the class. This is what we're going to be doing in our classes. That's what we normally do in class. But what if we change things a little bit? Instead of giving them the learning goals at the beginning of the lesson, which we commonly do, what if we just have them actively engage the students the course, okay? And tell them what do you think the lesson is going to be about. Have them look at the lesson and have them get the outcomes of the lesson, the objectives of the lesson. Asking questions about the purpose of the activity. If they have the activity, ask them, what do you think the purpose of this activity is? What do you think that at the end you're going to achieve from this activity? What do you think that the goal of this activity is? But involve them in the process. If we as teachers start involving our students in the process, they become more participative, number one. Secondly, they are going to be more active students, definitely, and they're going to value more what they do, and they're going to value their learning process as well. Okay, so these are some of the aspects that we need to reflect on. When students have the habit, because they need to create the habit, they need to create the habit of reflection, they need to create the habit of reasoning why they're doing this, then definitely students are going to achieve much more better goals. And at the end, they're going to value what they do, and they're going to value their classes as well. So here, for example, we have some learners' questions. This is basically one of the things that we could consider in when we feedback our students, is the type of learners' questions that students should have. So we have two. We're going to begin with the exit questions. In the case of the exit questions, for example, students in this case, let me show you here. Learners write the questions on slip of papers before leaving the room. So here, for example, students need to think about what they need to respond. They need to discuss of the ideas, what think about the benefits would be of the type of questions they're going to have. By doing this, obviously, we're going to gain some benefits, or students are going to gain some benefits. And this gives the teachers, for example, the feedback, which can be used in planning subsequent lessons. Also, students do not feel exposed and will feel fear to express their doubts, okay? Because they are part of the question, they're part of the planning of the lesson. And students feel also that they are listened to, which is very important. When we take in consideration our students into a class, they are going to be highly engaged, and if they are engaged, then definitely they're going to be motivated. Also, another benefit that we could find is the students reflect on their learning as well. So when they are part of the questions, they reflect on their learning. And this also has a linguistic objective in giving either if it's writing linguistic objective or whatever authentic communicative practice is that they have to do. Okay, so it's important for us to generate this type of questions in our classes. Other is, for example, the working groups, or generate questions as well, for example. In this case, other groups answer the questions. So in this case, the information on group generated questions, we use it to encourage the students to ask more questions. They work in small groups to create their questions about the content, about the lesson. Then each group necessarily asks also their questions to the other group. And this is one way also to start working on their own questions. What do we get by doing this? What are the benefits that we as teachers could get, and even students? First, this provides useful feedback for the teacher about the whole class, if the whole class understood the topic, the content. It also, students reflect on the content of the lesson. Sometimes we don't give opportunities to the student to reflect on the content. And I think this is when we start like lacking understanding. So it's important also to give the students the opportunity to reflect on content. The classroom is going to become more student-centered, which is very important. And obviously, when it's a student center, it's going to be more engaging, more motivating. And obviously, the traditional classes is going to be less teacher-centered class, which is what we need nowadays. And at the end, this also helps linguistic objectives in giving practices and informing questions. So it also helps the student to form the questions. So it also has like, as you can see, it could have like, it suits different purposes and it gives different input to our students and supports them very well. Negotiated criteria, it's another aspect that is crucially important in this process. We need to negotiate with our students. They need to learn how to negotiate. What should we assess in a presentation, for example? Okay, so we have a presentation. What is it exactly that we're going to assess in that presentation? We should get the students to reflect on their own work. For example, in this type of activity here that we have present your chart to the class, which group has the most interesting results. With this type of activity, students present their work to the class and are asked to assess others' work using some questions. So here's when they start like coming up with the question. Typically, the criteria for assessment comes from the course book or the teacher. Necessarily, it's either through the course book or the teacher. However, we can involve the students in the process and they could help us also define the criteria of assessment, make them part of the project, make them part of the class and of the lesson. So this is one of the most important aspects that I consider that it's crucially important in negotiating criteria. When we negotiate criteria, we tell the students, okay, you're going to be assessed, you have a presentation, what type of questions do you consider you should have there or assess? So they're going to give you different types of questions. Obviously, they could give you more. For example, here, look up and look at your audience. We have to be able to hear you, speak clearly, stand up straight. So this is just some kind of examples. Obviously, we as teachers, we need to give them more examples in order to support them. So they could come up with different ones, keep it short, look interested. So this is just some kind of the brainstorms that we could use in class with our students. We could write sticky notes and have them like participate actively in what is going to be evaluated. This is some possible criteria for students and they could come up with more, obviously. And obviously we as teachers, there's some aspects that definitely they're not going to consider. So we're the ones that we should like also give them those aspects that they're not going to consider. So we also write our sticky notes, for example, in this case, say what your topic is at the beginning, use a specific examples to get your point across, make sure you have a conclusion. So these are some of the aspects that maybe they're not going to mention, but the purpose is for us to also involve them and orient them. Now, when we do this, it becomes a lot easier to categorize, to have like some columns and some categories for them to understand exactly how can we fit their criteria. Okay, so for example, this is some possible ways that we could have like the categories, speech and manner. So these are all the examples and we tell them, okay, speech and manner, it has to do with look up, look at your audience, we have to be able to hear you, stand up straight. So this has to go under the speech and manner. The other ones, interesting to the audience, look interested, make it interesting by using pictures, by using diagrams. And the other one, easy to follow. So this is some way that we could, obviously we're going to negotiate with our students, but we cannot leave everything to them. Okay, so we need to orient them. We need to tell them exactly what is the way that they need to develop their own assessment. What is it in this case, if it's a presentation, what is it exactly that we're going to evaluate? They made their choice and we also are going to give them like some extra things that are going to be assessed, but we're making them a part of a process. Then last one, and here in this case, is learners' portfolios. This is something that a lot of teachers use. A lot of teachers use learners' portfolios and also evidence of global skills. In the case of learners' portfolios, This, for example, is just not a collection of information, okay? So this is, yes, it's a collection. What is it that we're going to collect? What is it exactly that we're going to select? What kind of activities are we are going to register in the portfolio? So it's about that. It's having the opportunity or giving the students the opportunity to be involved directly in a process. In evidence of global skills, which of the global skills can be assessed using portfolios? I think that all of them. If we talk about global skills, we can say that, for example, when we talk about portfolios, we use it a lot in ELT classes, like I told you before. And one of the benefits of portfolios that is also going to give us students, they show the process of the students, they're going to be self-assessed as well. And at the end, when we talk about the evidence, here we can talk that, for example, we can talk about communication and collaboration. Students necessarily, they need to communicate and they need to collaborate. Communication as the content of the portfolio. When they talk about the portfolio, they're going to communicate exactly what it is, what the content is. Either it could be speaking or it could be written. And collaboration, yes, because they're going to talk about the process of creating their product. When we talk about creativity and critical thinking, definitely is there. Creativity, well, the production of the product in their portfolio, and critical thinking in the section that of the process, how the design, the self-assess also, the choosing of the content, what kind of content they select in order to use in their portfolio. When we talk about the other global skill, intercultural competence and citizenship, yes, it's also there. Citizens also, in this case, I have questions, I think. Intercultural competence, for example, the discussions of the teams, it also can be part of the task, of the content, of the portfolio, the part of the assessment criteria. Digital literacy, it's also there, the content of the portfolio, the way that it was made, how was it designed, and emotional regulations as well of the well-being, discussion of all the stages, what was the process of their portfolio. So it's like sharing their information. Okay, and to wrap up, I'm just gonna go over to wrap up some conclusions. So first here, purpose and consequence of assessment for learning. Let me see if we have any questions. Discuss, I'm also agree with you about giving the students feedback to help. Yes, yes, that is true, Camila. Okay, I promise I'll read all of these. Okay, so for example, here we have assessment for learning. Only value we as if we assess. And please always remember that assessment for learning is the only value we assess. We need to do more assessment for learning. We need to incorporate more assessment for learning. That means that we should not assess. Okay, I think time's done. Okay, let me read over here. I'm sorry. Time for the other webinar. Okay, okay, perfect. Anyway, this was just what we're just going to finish with all just remember what we talked about today. Remember exactly the needs of assessment for learning. Remember as well how to evaluate our students, which is very important, and we're losing that a lot in classes. Don't forget observation and dialogue. Don't forget learner evidence. Don't forget to do proper feedback. This is crucially important, and we're missing lots of this. Well, not lots, but we're missing this, and students need it a lot. Effective feedback at all times. Don't forget the learner's portfolio is not just a matter of collecting information. It's not about that. Have your students, allow your students to become part of your classes. Allow them to become part of your planning of your classes, okay? That was basically it. I would like you to also read a little bit about global skills and our panel of experts talking about feedback, which is very important, about inclusive practices, and the role of us teachers in the English instruction, medium instruction. So that is very important. So we're going to leave this link for you to read it, download it, and read it. And that would be it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry. What time is it already? Well, that was it. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Claudia, thank you very much for sharing all of these interesting things with us. I think we all loved it. Our chat was really, really active during your presentation, and it's gonna really help our future English teachers. Okay, Claudia, thank you
Oh,
very
thank you.
much. Once again, thank you all guys for being here with us, and don't forget to evaluate the presentation and stay tuned for the final webinar of this week, which is, give me a second, I'll share my screen real quick. It'll take place immediately after this. Oops, have some problem. There we go. So remember, stay tuned for the last webinar, lección inaugural, licenciatura en Humanidades y Lengua Castellana, on this same channel. Thank you very much. And that would be it for this afternoon. So have a very nice afternoon, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Goodbye.